Shall we start?
Yes.
Alright. So, welcome everyone to our second episode. Um, Today we're mostly gonna focus on the situation in Iran. I'm just gonna ramble a little bit at first because there's a couple of concepts that I wanted to touch upon that I think are quite interesting, but who knows? We'll see. Because recently I've been looking into what some call as group or collective consciousness, and I've taken some notes. I've also taken some notes about the the history of Iran, because I've been trying to educate myself and some people out there who names shall be dropped on today's episode. Um, so I'll refer to my notes I in the hopes I won't ramble as much as last time. But essentially, what I wanted to talk about when it comes to collective consciousness is this idea that when large numbers of people focus their thoughts or emotions on the same outcome, their combined mental activity can generate, um, this collective consciousness that's capable of affecting reality. Now, these are concepts of a subfield of psychology called parapsychology that most folks in academia completely disregard as a pseudoscience. But to me, it doesn't really matter because most of those people are idiots anyway. We can go on about that in future episodes. Um, but basically, the idea is that human minds can synchronize and produce a magnified effect similar to resonance. And when enough individuals share a unified intention, the collective focus may subtly influence probabilities and social dynamics and the unfolding of events. What's interesting about this is that they actually did an experiment in 1993 in Washington, and uh, they tested what they call, and I'm going to try not to butcher this word, the Maharishi effect, which basically is a theory that proposes that when sufficiently large group of people practice coherent, focused meditation, their combined consciousness can influence social events, promoting harmony, reducing conflict, and even lowering crime. And they did this experiment in 93 in Washington, D.C., where approximately 4,000 trained meditators practiced group meditation for several weeks with the intention of reducing violent crime. Researchers reported that during this period, violent crime in the city dropped by roughly 23%, correlating with the number of participants in the meditation sessions, uh, which suggests that the unified mental focus of a relatively small proportion of the population could measurably influence the broader social environment, providing empirical support for the concept that the collective human consciousness can actively shape real world events. And while I was looking into this, I I stumbled upon a Persian concept called, uh, I think it's pronounced Quarena, I'm not sure, which basically means divine glory. And it describes a spiritual force that bestowed legitimacy, strength, and fortune upon rulers and their peoples. It was believed to flow from the heavens to those aligned with truth and righteousness, linking the moral and spiritual order to political and military success. So when the people collectively supported a just ruler, this divine radiance strengthened the king and his kingdom, increasing prosperity, courage, and the likelihood of victory against enemies. Um, this concept of divine glory could also abandon the corrupt or unworthy, causing rulers or dynasties to falter. In essence, the collective belief and loyalty of the populace were crucial. The more the people recognized and upheld the rightful order, the stronger the king's divine favor became. Throughout this framework, the unity and conviction of a society were seen as directly influencing real world events, making the kingdom's fortune a reflection of both the ruler's virtue and the collective alignment of the people with cosmic order. Now, I hope that this might help folks that feel that it is too late to fight back or that they are too powerless to do so. Uh, because it shows that even by adding your consciousness to the collective, you are taking an important first step when it comes to fighting back against the invaders. Obviously, it's not good enough in the grand scheme of things. It's not. Eventually, we all need to find the strength to take action, but it is a start. And and of course, like on the other hand, you might say, what about the collective consciousness of the invaders? But counterbalancing our own. I wouldn't be too worried about that, uh, because we're talking about extremely stupid and mentally weak individuals. Otherwise, they wouldn't be part of the cult that they call a religion. So I wouldn't be too worried about their mental powers. Um, and and the thing that like people also need to always remember is that every time we've been united in the fight against them, at least I talk regarding my knowledge as a Westerner, we have won. The Reconquista in Spain and Portugal, centuries before that in France at the Battle of Tours in the 8th century, um, Vlad III in Wallachia, the siege of Vienna 2 centuries after that, and even the Crusades, like the First Crusade, we were unified and we won. We lost the follow Crusades because then greed and personal ambitions took over, and that's why we lost. Every time we've been united, we have beat, and people need to keep that in mind. Like, we are not the weak side here; they are. We need to learn from history, learn from the past, and not self-destruct. And speaking about that, and speaking about greed and personal ambitions, we can segue onto our main topic, by uh, addressing something we already mentioned during our first episode, which at the time we mentioned a certain Discord server that a couple of us had been part of for a cup of coffee. And it was a Discord server that was filled with Nazis and no action was taken. That's why we left. And at the time, I chose not to name any names because I thought that the the person in charge of that Discord server, he was just too diplomatic for his own good. So, no need to name any names, but screw it. Uh, his name is Code Victorian, and since our last episode, he published a video with what can only be described as a remarkably idiotic take on the attack on the Islamic regime in Iran. And I believe that folks like him are incredibly dangerous uh, to our cause. I think these are people that are motivated by greed, they are motivated by personal ambitions, and they have no real knowledge, nor do they seek to have it. And essentially, the video he posted, which, I give, as a former filmmaker and photographer, I give props for the lighting, the scenery he creates. It's all very well done, but then, and most people see that and they see the suits and all that, and they think, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. But he doesn't. And his take was basically what a lot of the people on the far right have also been saying, is to criticize, because Israel was involved, and because they think that this, like, their excuse to criticize the attack on the regime is to say that, oh, this will lead to an influx of Iranian refugees into Europe, because that's what has always happened during a regime change, comparing the situation in Iran to Iraq, to Syria, to Afghanistan. And that's incredibly, incredibly stupid. Like, only someone that's completely ill-informed will would ever compare Iranians to those other guys. Because when those countries, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, when they were attacked by the United States and their regimes changed, nothing really changed, because the people in those countries, they're all Muslims. So you just replace one group of retarded Muslims with another group of retarded Muslims. But Iran is a completely different case, because the real Iranians, they're Muslims in name only. And you can see that by the people celebrating the death of their, supreme leader, which, by the way, is just, he just sounds like a bad anime villain. Um, and they are celebrating in the streets. And anyone that has had any contact with these people before, they are not the same ilk. They love the West. They love the countries that welcomed them after 1979. They respect the culture. They respect the history. They respect the natives. And all of them, as much as, like, by their own admission, as much as they love the countries that, some of them have been born in, they can't wait to go back to a free Iran to help rebuild it. And and they know what they want. They want their king back, so that he can bring stability back to the country and turn it to what it was prior to 1979. Um, so so yeah, it's a completely different situation, and anyone comparing it to those other countries just doesn't know what they're talking about and doesn't want to know, because it doesn't take much to figure out these things. There's plenty of very brave Iranians on social media that, even prior to this attack, have been fighting the regime nonstop. And all you need to do is follow any one of them, and you can learn about the real Iran.
Okay, so I think that this Iran thing is a great hope for the world because it goes back to biblical times where Cyrus the Great created the cylinder and the first charter of human rights. And it's ironic because people that are with the purple hair, the transgender, the vegan, the climate change, all that ideological subversion that is just now neo-Marxism, they're always talking about human rights and oppression and all these buzzwords that they're taught in their liberal educations, if you can even call it an education. They're going up against a society that invented human rights. They're going up against a society that is anti woke just by definition of its existence. And because they've been fighting basically a version of Hitler for 47 years, an incredibly proud nationalistic society that is pro Iran over everything else. You have Kurds in Iran, you have Persians in Iran, you have like 4 or 5 other ethnicities, but they're all Iranian first over the religion, over anything. And they're not necessarily white male, which is original sin, like Adam and Eve and the apple for woke culture. White male, they're not necessarily white, so they're basically the kryptonite to everything that this ideology has been slowly, as a corrosive poison in society. It's basically the antidote to everything. And if Reza Pahlavi goes back and establishes a constitutional monarchy, you have a huge, huge, huge monumental success story that is pretty much the chemotherapy to woke poison in the world. And you have people that are mathematicians, engineers, tech entrepreneurs establish a new version of Dubai or Singapore in Tehran. And you have also the elimination of a regime that has been using the natural resources and the money of the Iranians to bankroll 5 different wars in 4 different places, and to also put money in the pockets of politicians, journalists, teachers, professors in multiple countries in the West. So it's a win-win across the board. So it's why I think we have to really fight and be vocal and allow Trump and allow Netanyahu to finish the job and really, really push for King Reza to come back and establish a constitutional monarchy, because I see it as a great hope that counteracts all the damage that has been done in the last 20 years. What do you guys think?
Yeah, because like basically it's a domino effect. Like the domino effect that this can create, not just for the Middle East, but for everywhere, the rest of the world, is massive. And uh, I don't think people. I mean, I don't. I'm sure that a lot of people don't know just how um, westernized Iran was pre 1979. Like I took some notes to help anyone listening. Um, so basically, the current, the royal family, um, they rose to power in 1921. Um, it became with Reza Shah Pahlavi, and he was a former army officer who seized power in 21 and crowned himself Shah in 1925. And he founded the Pahlavi dynasty. I hope I'm not butchering any of these names. Uh, and his major policies at the time include aggressive modernization and secularization. He reduced the power of Islamic clergy. He built a centralized modern state. His key reforms included Western style legal system, a national army, railways and infrastructure, mandatory Western dress codes in some contexts. He um, he basically attempted to model Iran at the time after the founder of the Turkey Republic, by emphasizing
Ataturk?
nationalism. Uh, the yes, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and yeah, by emphasizing modernization, nationalism, and secular governance. And he was then forced to abdicate in 41 after Allied forces invaded Iran during the Second World War. And his son, Mohammed, such an unfortunate name, Reza Pahlavi, became the last Shah. He ruled until 1971. And basically, um, he pursued, again, rapid Western style modernization. Um, he introduced women's rights. Women gained the right to vote in the 1960s. They could serve in parliament and become judges. Women entered the universities and professional careers. He expanded education. Literacy programs spread into rural areas. School enrollment surged across all levels. Western clothing and lifestyle became common in cities. Nightclubs, cinemas, universities, and Western media flourished. Uh, Tehran in the 1970s was often described as cosmopolitan and Europeanized. And this affected urban middle class, expansion of professionals, engineers, and civil servants, economic growth and prosperity. From the 60s to the to late 70s, Iran experienced one of the fastest economic expansions in the world. Their GDP growth often 9 to 12% annually in peak years. Iran climbed to the 18th largest economy in the world by 1977. The economy was larger than Turkey's and far ahead of South Korea's at the time. Uh, this was also possible due to the oil revenue. Uh, the production increased dramatically between 1950 and 1978, reaching almost 6 million barrels per day. This money funded infrastructure, industry, education, and military modernization. They transitioned from agriculture to industrial economy. New industries included steel, automobiles, textiles, machinery, and cement. Factories and infrastructure expanded rapidly. Major projects included highways linking major cities, rail expansion, ports and airports, modern universities. It was positioning itself to become a regional economic powerhouse. As far as the cultural life in the 60s and 70s, in major cities you had Western music and cinema. Universities collaborated with Europe and the US. Tourism and luxury hotels expanded. Tehran, in particular, was seen as a modern international city, attracting business diplomats and students. Women often worked in medicine, law, academia, government. Um, it was a major Western ally, close relationship with the United States, cooperation with NATO partners, strong ties to United Kingdom. It served as a pillar of Western influence in the Middle East during the Cold War. Uh, the Shah also maintained diplomatic relationships with Israel. And yeah, so there's no one with half a brain that can look at this fact and say that the attack on the regime is a bad thing. You just can't. You know, we are talking about an evil, evil regime that took all of this away, that took all the rights that women have away, and turn Iran into just another hellhole. And no one in their right mind can condemn this unless you're completely retarded, unless you're just a Nazi, because
Or unless you're
Israel,
getting money from the regime, right? Because there's a lot of people in the West that are getting money
Yeah,
from the regime that are condemning the attack.
yeah, because like it's idiotic, and you can't like the confidence that some of these people have. Like again, the cold Victorian guy to just sit there in front of the camera, cosplaying as Churchill, and the confidence of saying something so stupid that can so easily be researched just because, let's be honest, and after that video, I'm fully of the opinion that that's why he didn't take action against the literal Nazis in his Discord server, is because you don't want to give props to Israel and you don't want to support a people that they are very thankful to Israel, the people of Iran. And that doesn't match with the propaganda that everything evil is caused by the Jews, and this is just another evil plan to get more refugees into Europe, when you have actually Iranians saying, no, we don't want that, we want to go back to a free Iran and we want to help rebuild it. But it doesn't matter because the Jews.
Yeah, this pseudo intellectualism is very pervasive across the West and in America where I live. And the problem is people don't read, and the problem is the Jew hating audience doesn't read either. So it makes it very easy to stand on this platform and say the same thing over and over and over again. Iranians are nothing like Afghanis. Iranians are nothing like Iraqis or what happened in Libya. It's a completely different society, and all these people are regurgitating the same vomit. Israel is bad. The West needs to get rid of all the immigrants, and we have to get rid of the Jews. The argument that the Iranians are going to flood us is also erroneous, because you can easily just say, "Hey, why don't we just close our border?" Something that we're not doing anyway. So the argument is twice as stupid, because you're not doing it to begin with in the first place for people that are coming on boats to England, or people that are going to Portugal or Germany or Holland and getting free welfare. Talk about the welfare. Talk about the welfare for immigrants over your own citizens. Talk about how the border's not being closed. But you just want to beat Netanyahu with your stick because it's good for your audience, and it's good for your ideological hatred of a people that aren't necessarily the ones responsible for your governments failing you.
Yeah, because like you can't, like the problem, and we talked about in the last episode, like the problem with the far right crowd is that you can't put every single foreigner in the same basket. Like you just can't. Like you have to be, first of all, you need to be pragmatic, and you need to realize that we need allies. We need anyone that is willing to fight Islam, and even more so in this context where it's very clear that Iranians are not the same as Iraqis, as Syrians, as Afghans. They're just not. Okay, it's apples and oranges, or apples and rotten oranges. Like, and you just like you have to put aside your far right hatred, because then like again like that's why like I think that like being far right or being far left is exactly the same, because they want the same thing. They want full control. um they kind of hate different sects of the population. But sometimes, like in this case, like it depends, because neither side wants a free Iran. Because, like you said, for the woke mob, it completely breaks their ideology. Because here it
It breaks
is.
the woke right too, though. So because I was telling you and
Yeah,
Jen before we were all live that there's two sides of this extremism. extreme ideological subversion and cognitive dissonance. Well, you have the far left with their craziness that we've seen since Joe Biden took presidency in my country, and it started with Obama. But you have after Joe Biden's failures in America and the failures of the left in Europe, like Ursula von der Leyen, you started to see a radicalization of youth and middle-aged people on the right, but it became woke and subverse as well. And you're left with guys like Code Victor, and you're left with audiences like Tucker Carlson's that don't read. These people don't read, and it's why if they see there's a far left problem, they join a far right idiocy, and it's the same thing. It's the
Yeah,
same thing, but
but
both of them,
like,
sorry,
go
both of
ahead, go
them
ahead.
both of them fear a free Iran, which is what Nicholas was saying. I wanted to just add to that.
Yeah, because these people, the thing, and the other thing is that the wokeism and the leftism, it invaded universities in the last, and there was like a huge peak of this, like, I don't know. I was in university. I started university around 2011, and I didn't notice it as much, but then slowly I started hearing, like, around 2013, there suddenly was a change in the discourse. There was a lot of talk about, suddenly out of nowhere, multiculturalism, blah blah, these words just popping in there. And I was studying at the time, my bachelor's at the time was languages and culture. And so they used the idea of talking about culture to be like multiculturalism, although our classes were specifically about the culture of the country where the university was located. They were just kind of pulling it and then putting these posters and all these things in through the department. And it was very strange, but at the time I thought nothing of it because I'm not racist. I admire most cultures. I like to travel, experience the cultures when I go to a place. That's why I travel, to go to a place and experience the culture there. If I wanna, when I go to Italy, I want to see Italians. When I go to, France, I want to see the French. It's if I go to whatever country, like if I go to Japan, I want to see the Japanese, at a majority of the population, sure. Uh, but then it started getting more and more aggressive. And why am I saying this? Because when people go to university, and I was in university for a very long time because I eventually pursued a PhD, and when we're in university for so long, not only is there this political indoctrination, but there's this kind of like character building to a negative degree sometimes. And I noticed it, which is arrogance. So not only are you being indoctrinated with this very leftist belief system, propaganda thing, but also you're being arrogant. You're gaining this overconfidence about your degrees, your knowledge. So basically, if you're overly confident and you're getting these things injected, these ideas injected in you in the middle of the things that are injected in your course that you're actually supposed to study because it's what you signed up for in university. It creates a huge problem, which is people that are so-called educated, but really they're educated in their field. They know nothing about the real world, but they think they do because they're arrogant as hell. And eventually I left academia because I just could not bear this arrogance. And this arrogance comes with the political part, it comes with the social part, it comes with all these things with feminism, misogyny, all these talks. And also what Nicholas talked about in the beginning, which was the parapsychology situation, which is like people that want to look at things that are beyond the conventional science, or that can actually support it or can expand it to a different way, or actually challenge the current paradigms of scientific research that some of them are outdated. We have to accept that. And yet, because there's this arrogance, there's this very closed-minded thinking in all aspects of life. And these are the people that end up participating in a lot of the decision making for the countries and the policies and everything. And it's a problem because in countries where the literacy is very low, I'm going to give the example, for example, where the media literacy, where a lot of information goes around, and not only that, but in countries where historically speaking there was a very high level of illiteracy, for example, Portugal, um, people look up to the people that go to university. Even if you just went for 3 years, did a bachelor in some random like liberal arts thing. No offense to people that studied liberal arts. I also studied some useless stuff in my time, but you know, you know what I mean. Um, these people, they go 3 years to college, and instead of getting humbled by, which is it's what's supposed to happen when you're learning. If you have half a brain, you the more you learn, the more questions you have, and you're supposed to be more humble. It should be that way, because we want to have more questions. We want to learn even more and realize that the more we know, the more we don't know, because we realize that it's so much. The 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 world is so big and there's so many things to learn. um but these people that come from more like illiterate backgrounds, and no offense to that at all, in fact, my ancestors did not go to college, but they look up to the people that go to college. And many of them are these dumbasses that went 3 years to college. Most of them actually went just to party. And suddenly these people are the authorities. They're the voices of the people. It's a
Yeah.
Yeah, but
problem.
I don't want you to think that it started in 2011, because it really everything starts with communism. And what does communism hate more than anything? It hates science, it hates entrepreneurship, it hates people that can run a business. Most of these professors, and if you look at it in the United States, it really started happening in the 70s with the USSR infiltrating our institutions here. They hate
Hmm.
people that can open a business, run a business. These professors, some of them are studied law, but they don't actually practice law. These philosophers, I don't even want to talk about Hollywood actors because they're not even in this. They're just dumb to begin with. But these people that are the words on authority on academia, you put them in the real world, they cannot make money on their own. Why? Because they're theoretically they're competent, but with anything that has real world application, which I think is the most important thing in life, is anything that has real world application, because it's what separates babies and children from adults that are fully functioning, is the enemy of this way of thinking. It's the enemy of the old wokeism, which was just liberalism to begin with, and this
Hmm.
neo-Marxist thing, which is wokeism. Real world application is their enemy, because the
Yeah.
stuff that they're telling kids to study is not something that's going to make you money and provide for a wife, a husband, two daughters, or a son, and having a little dog and having the car payment and the mortgage. You can't, which what is known as the American dream in my country. You cannot fuel the American dream with stuff that is not a real world application. And
Yes.
and I think this is the enemy right now that the whole world has, is
Yeah.
because it's just communism repackaged for the 21st century.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're
It's
talking.
just
Oh, sorry.
yeah, sorry. It's just
No,
the
no.
communism like it's the old communism which is packed and being sold as liberalism or wokeism. It's the same thing happening in this part of the world, India as well. If we talk about the Western world, here we have professors who are teaching in universities, but they're not just teaching; they're not unbiased or neutral. They are trying to create a cult in the universities, and these guys are directly linked with the communist powers. So if we talk about China is funding these institutions which kind of get into the universities, try to make the students woke. They're just building their future leaders. Their only job is to get into the parliaments and disrupt anything they want. And Alberto, high five to you. Everyone
Thank you.
starts from the university as communist. The moment he gets a wife, he sees his kid, and then slowly he migrates towards the right, because the left thing doesn't work. If someone wants the real time example of how left thing works, he should visit Cuba, where he would spend 5 or 6 hours a day for in the line for just gas for his car. It's going on everywhere.
And Nicholas, when you described about the Iran before 1979, I just closed my eyes and somehow today's Europe was in front of me. Women had
Yeah.
rights. They were thinking. Everyone was wearing liberal Western clothes, and women had we have the power to think and to act. But sooner or later, the Sharia law is trying to come in. So if today Iran gets freed, if we get the Persian kingdom back, we might have that kingdom shifted towards Europe if Europe does, and to the reality. And when we talk about Iran, some of the illiterate guys there, they're talking about the refugee crisis. Iran is not just another country like Somalia. It is an ancient civilization. This civilization is there since 7 centuries, and the persecution of the Zoroastrianism, the people, with the fire god, it started. So they migrated towards India in the 7th century. We have very few of them, hardly 0.0005% of the entire Indian population. But these guys made the best, heavy industries. These guys helped us win wars against the Islamic blunder that the country Pakistan is, and they're pretty good. So if at all Iran frees itself from the Khamenei government and all these people, these all immigrants, they are going to back to their homeland, and they are going to restore it. So the domino effect is going to be like amazing, because the moment Iran gets freed, the next in line would be Lebanon. Just check Lebanon before 1965, and you'll be
Yeah,
literally asked.
Mariot, it had 40% of the population were Christian in Lebanon in the last century. And if
Yes,
you go back to 600 AD, it was all Christian. So spot
yes,
on, man. You know
and
exactly what
these
you're talking
guys,
about.
yes, and these guys were liberal. They were like the real liberal, not today's liberal. These Christians would be like, okay, let's pray together, let's do this together. Let's show some humanity and stuff. But they didn't look at that big knife which was being pointed at their back, and they all got stabbed. It's the same thing happened in India as well. We were like too liberal and everything. And if we talk about these achievement of this current regime, there's a place called as Kashmir, where the India and Pakistan, they both fight at this region. Is the important region for both of us. They had a population of around 100,000 Kashmiri Pandits, the most people who love non-violence, and their job was just to gain more and more knowledge. Within a night, because of an inspiration from this Iranian regime, all of them were slaughtered. They were raped. They were killed. Within a night, 100,000 guys had to leave their land, and they were, as if you're an American, you have become, you know, a refugee in your own country. It's the same thing happened over there. So, anyone, you can hate Israel if you want to, but look at the humanitarian aspect of it as well. I mean, I was pretty heartbroken that night when the first incident came out, that the girl was hit in her head and she died on the spot because her hair were visible. I mean, I couldn't believe they have a moral police over there. And as I told on the group, like I would be explaining the funny side. We have some people mourning in India. They are from the similar community. They were mourning on the street, and a lot of reporters asked them, "Why are you mourning?" They say our supreme leaders got killed, and some of them were like, "But you're in India." No, no, no. Though even if we are in India, but we still support that regime over there. And I mean, they have a border. Like there's a Pakistan in between us. We have nothing else to do. And then one thing came to my mind: like either you support the country you live in, or you live in the country you support. Like you cannot have it both ways. I mean, I wonder. People in America, they get all the freedom of speech and everything. Like they're safe, the women especially. And the moment they get into America, they start hating America. The same
Oh, I
in
see
Germany.
that. I see that every day here. I see that every day in America.
Yes, I mean it really boils my blood, because and as far as the American universities are concerned, I've seen some of the students traveling from here on the scholarships, and they just become like awoke with they, they paint their hair and rest of the stuff, and they just forget that they are there to get education, knowledge, and not doing all these nasty stuff. I mean, what today's Europe is what Iran was back in those times. Even Afghanistan. Just Google the pics of Afghanistan before
Mm-hmm.
1950s. You'll see the difference. So we have examples in front of us, right? One civilization gets liberated today, it will have a domino effect, and you can see things are crumbling.
100%.
People the streets, and
Totally
they
correct.
know they're going to lose it. Yeah.
I saw a great video. I forget who. You probably know his name. He was a former minister at the government in India. Really cool, brilliant guy. And he was being interviewed by this young, beautiful English Muslim girl. I think she was also part Indian or Pakistani. And
Mhm.
he was telling her, "I'm doing the right thing by not allowing the Muslims in my country. I'm doing it
Yes,
because
his
I
name is Subramaniam
yeah,
Swamy.
loved him,
Yeah.
loved him." And he says, if a country becomes at least 40% Islamified, that's a problem, and the country will stop being the country that it once was. You obviously know more about him than I do, so if you could talk a little bit more about him, I think it'll be interesting from your part of the world.
Yes, because see, we have faith in every religion. So I'm a Hindu, and if you ask me, Jesus is the king, I say I put my faith in Jesus, Lord the Christ. I don't have any issues with it, because Jesus Christ, or let it be Judaism or any religion on earth, if it is going to teach me some good thing, I have to accept it. That's what the core principle of Hinduism is. We cannot be fighting, we cannot be comparing. Come on, guys, we are not purchasing something on Amazon, right? My religion has this, your religion has this, all of these things. So we are a multicultural society. We've got ancient churches in India, like, and we are living freely. The moment any place gets more and more number of Islamists over there, they start dominating things. The first thing would start, they would start offering their prayers in the street by blocking the traffic. They're just testing the waters, they're just testing the ground, like what is the degree that you're going to stop them. If you don't, they're going to take over. So what Mr. Swami said is that wherever there are dominant areas where Muslim population is more, these guys stop, the church mass. They stop the temple bells. They say, because the prayer starts with there's only one God, and which is their own God, and no other God should exist in the world, or any follower who doesn't follow their own religion should be killed, and that is written in their respective books. So the reporter, she was trying to put words into Mr. Swami's mouth so that he would say something that would appease her agenda, but he just told the truth, and she couldn't take it. Typical BBC or typical CNN, you
And
can.
the funny thing is that Muslims like her aren't actually Muslim. They remind me of the Christians that only go to mass on spring, Easter, or Christmas, because a true Muslim would not allow a woman to be able to speak for the BBC. She could not dress the way she could dress, and she could not talk to a man that way. So it's
Exactly.
funny that she's defending Islam, but yet
Yeah.
you're
So
not actually practicing what's in the Quran.
right. So here, there's the funny fact is our constitution, it gives equal rights to every citizen. So whenever they commit any crime, they want to be, treated with the constitution, under the constitution. But if at all someone else do something, they want the Sharia for them. So that's the hypocrisy that we
Yeah.
always.
You know what else is funny? In the Quran, in none of the, because the Quran's been altered 9 or 8 times. They've burned 9 of them. They've changed it so many times. In none of the versions of the Quran does it say to pray outside like that. They all pray in mosques. If you go to Libya, if you go to Saudi Arabia, people don't pray in the street. They don't do it. They go to the mosques. They go to these Western countries because it's a way of asserting dominance. It's like, a gorilla pounding its chest to assert dominance, or a lion roaring in the jungle. They do it because they want to assert dominance in society. And like you said, they're testing the waters, but it's not in their actual book, which is another hypocrisy.
Yes. So there are two versions of Islam, we call it. One is the Mullah's Islam, and one is the human Islam. So Mullah is someone who learns from the religious school, who knows nothing about what the Western world how the Western world works or how people earn money. These guys, they just grow up within a religious institution, and all they want to do is, put their dominance over their own people. So these guys would always be coming with some scriptures. They would call it fatwas. So if you go to any Middle Eastern country, they are not allowed to be on the street. I have seen it. I have personally experienced it. But if you go to any liberal country, let's say England or Times Square, New York, right? I was shocked as anything when I see things happening in New York, and it shouldn't happen over there. Loudspeakers and whatnot. And can you like translate the call to the prayer over there? That they're literally giving death threats to everyone.
And they're telling people to not own dogs in New York. New York is one of the most dog friendly cities in the world, and because dogs are haram in Islam, they're telling New Yorkers they shouldn't own dogs anymore. They're trying to
Yes,
police people the way they police people in their own countries when they're considered a guest here.
yes, and the worst problem is, the white people. I would call them white people because I love them, but they are too friendly with these guys. They don't know what is coming for them. They just really don't know what is coming for them. Even the girls, they would.
and
Uh,
and they don't want to know. That's the thing,
yes.
because
So what I really want to emphasize on the power of community. I mean, you've got a very good thing
yes,
going on over there. As we talked about cultures and what is the other word, cultural appropriation and the multi diversity thing. I'm from India. I wouldn't want to see another India forming in anywhere else. When we talk about culturism, is we respect each culture equally. And yes,
yeah.
the bottom line is not every culture is going to be equal. Some cultures are going to be stupid. As we can see the Minnesota, Alberto, it is full of the Somali culture now.
Oh, I'm so depressed with what's going on in my country here in Minnesota. It's so sad. It's so sad.
Uh, they've just put a new word in the Oxford dictionary. It is called as leering center. Yeah,
I was
where
gonna.
where
They can't even spell learning. Like,
wow. And I was really shocked to the hell. Come on, if it is happening in any part of
You
the
know what the
country,
best part? Remember how I said that Iran was the kryptonite to wokeism? Nick Shirley is the kryptonite to wokeism too, because he's a 21-year-old Christian virgin guy. He says he's not going to have sex with a woman until he's married. He's never committed a crime. He doesn't drink alcohol. He doesn't smoke weed. He's the most straightest arrow I've ever seen in my country. The only thing they have against him is that when he was 13 or 14 in college, he used to do prank videos. But nothing serious, nothing life threatening, and that's why I think it's so cool that we have him as the spokesperson for this type of new journalism, which is actual journalism, because they can't shoot him down with anything.
right? And if I tell you about the Ilan Omar, she is not just your congresswoman or something. Yeah, she
She's
has her
terrorist.
ties with the Islamic Brotherhood and all these things, because she's been to India on unofficial visit. She's been to Pakistan on unofficial visit, and the part she has visited had the most terrorist activities happening. So she was kind of funding things. If at all the United States, investigates her, and if they follow the money, they're not going to find the money, because that money must have been used somewhere in the Palestine or whatever that we call it. I've been following her. I've been trying to, you know, check her out, her whatever the thing she's doing since a longer time. And I must say Nick Shirley. And even while he was investigating it, there were people opposing him, and it was a shock. And
No, they tried to
it,
kill him. Now
yes,
he has so much security right now. He's packed. They've got guns. They've got Kevlar anti-vest. He's got 4 or 5 guys with him all the time because his life is in imminent danger now.
yeah, it's the same happened with a blogger. She's in India. Like, she's from a Hindu background. So what on a news show she had an argument with a Islamic cleric, and she just quoted what is written in their book, and she got death threats. She had to have Z plus security. She had to go, off the radar. It's been 2 years now, and the cleric who kind of gave her threats is still in the news shows and stuff.
That's terrible. But the thing is, they don't even accept when you throw back their own religion at them. They're like, "Oh, you're making it up, or you're speaking it out of context." There's a guy, his name I think is Bob. He's a street preacher in England, in London. Very smart. He's this tall white guy, slightly overweight, and he was talking to a woman, this pretty Muslim woman, and he was telling her, "Look, it's right here in your book. A man can strike a woman even if he suspects that she's cheated on him. It doesn't have to be confirmed." He's like, "Oh no! What the book is actually trying to say is that it's like if a child gets too close to the fire with his hand, to prevent the child from being burned, you slap his hand so his hand doesn't go into the fire." And the guy then says,
Ah,
"Are you comparing women to children? So you're saying that women don't have the rationality to conduct themselves as an adult?" And then the woman said, "Like, no, that's not. You're speaking that out of context too." And then he's like, "Okay, so I can
because they
strike the
marry
woman."
children.
Yeah, I can strike, and he strikes the Quran like if he was pretending to strike a woman, and then it just became about him striking the Quran, and she disregarded his argument of saying, "You just compared your own self to a child. You're comparing all of you to a child. You can't reason with these people." And part of the reason why
Yeah.
is because they all intermarry, most of them. So you can marry your cousin. 70% of the people in the Arab Peninsula, especially that part, they all share DNA within their own family because they've married cousins. They married a sister. I've seen an imam say, "What is the best person to take care of his sister? The brother. The brother would be the best custodian. So the brother should have kids with her." They think this is part of the problem, and that's why
Yeah, like
their IQ is so low in Somalia. It's 60 IQ.
on
Yes.
average, which means there's a
You
lot
must
of
have
them that's even below
you
that.
must have seen that lady giving a statement. I know fraud is bad, and she just goes blank. She can't even recover from from that.
Yeah, and the
You
guy
know,
the woman behind her is like, "Oh no, she fucked it up." And then remember, our culture is more than just rice and bananas.
yeah,
Sometimes I like to eat rice and bananas.
yeah. I mean, I can definitely tell you. My brother, he served in the Indian Navy. His only job was to keep these Somalian pirates. We call them mosquitoes, from the merchant vessels over there. That is their national. That is their source of income. They just
I'm allergic
ride.
to mosquitoes.
Yeah, they just ride those boats and try to hijack. And hey, I am the captain. And
But
the same guy,
I've seen that video. Yeah, I've seen that video. I am the
he
captain
was
now.
running. He was running for mayor over there. God damn! I mean,
No
I
way.
wonder.
But that's the thing, like that. That's why it is 100% a cult. And what Alberto was talking about, that woman trying to justify it. That's when you do, like when you're in a abusive relationship. That's what you do. You try to justify the abuse.
Stock, yeah,
Uh,
Stockholm syndrome, we call it.
yeah, and like,
Also that.
and that's what it is. Like if the creed you're a part of uh, is 100% positive and good for you, that's it. It's bulletproof. You don't have to justify it. You
Yeah,
just do
exactly.
your own thing. If it works for you, it works for you. Like, I'm not a Christian. I'm a heathen. I don't go on about it. Um, I am that because it works for me, and that's it. I don't really care if it works for other people or not. Um, and I don't need to justify it past the point of it's good for me, it works for me, that's it. And like these people, and the problem is that what's happening now, and again, because like in the 20th century, and I think I mentioned this in the last episode, so apologies to anyone that's keeping track. We've Humanity developed this very special kind of arrogance where suddenly we completely disregard everything that came before. Because up until the 20th century, we had respect for our ancestors. We learned from them. And then suddenly, everything that came before doesn't work. It's
Yeah, it's disregarded.
outdated. We know better than they do. And humans are not meant to live like that. Humans are not meant to disregard their ancestors. And in this particular case, you don't even have to look to your ancestors. Like all of this, what happened in Iran when the Islamic regime took over and they appointed a super mega leader, happened in the 70s, in 1979. You don't have to look at the history books. Like it's all just there. Like, a lot of the people were already alive. And the way that the Muslims took over at the time was because of the leftists, was because of the communists. The same thing that's happening all across the West. And
Yeah.
as soon as they took power, they started killing off the leftists. And the same thing is going to happen if they ever fully take over anywhere else.
But
Like
that just goes back to how the religion started with Muhammad in 600 AD. If you look at the first passages of the Quran, they're really peaceful. They're very nice. Brother, do unto me as I do unto you. Your religion, my religion, my religion. But once Muhammad raised an army, took Mecca and Medina, that goes out the window. And this whole Somali pirate thing, they were pirates in the Mediterranean. Thomas Jefferson, my third president, had a war with the pirates in Tripoli because of this. They've been doing this from the very, very beginning. They do this communist liberalism where like, oh my God, the white lady is nice to me. She baked me a pie. I'm the poor Muslim family from Afghanistan. I'm the refugee. And the moment that we're the majority, we take a chunk out of you. They've been doing this in 600 AD. This is nothing new.
That's the thing. Like their MO has never changed. Ever.
Exactly.
And even like that thing, because like a lot of people can say, oh, like Europeans also practice incest, like the royals, like the famous or infamous Habsburg chin from the Habsburg dynasty. Yes, that did happen. The difference is we learned from that.
Exactly.
They haven't.
Yeah. When these guys start giving such examples, it's when they want to practice it. They're just defending themselves, giving these examples. And as you talked about, Alberta, it's called as beg, borrow, steal. When I'm lesser in number, I'm going to beg. When I'm equal,
What's it called? Could you repeat it, my dude?
What?
The name you said a name for it? I couldn't hear the name.
Beg, borrow,
steal.
Beg, borrow, and steal.
Beg, borrow, steal. Beg, borrow, steal. Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm going to beg when I'm lesser in numbers. When I'm equal, I'm going to borrow, and when I'm more in numbers, I'm going to steal it from you. Just look at the pattern. Wherever these guys have gone, has there been any addition to the resources of the country? Has there ever been extensions to any countries? Like you've got you let the refugees in, and they have helped you, doing things better. No, they're just turning into a pile of rubble or pile of rubbish.
Yeah. Anytime any adult has to lecture another adult on human rights, that's always a red flag, because you're assuming that the other adult is retarded, because you're telling him, hey, people shouldn't be able to steal from you. They shouldn't have to murder you. You're basically telling an adult what you would tell a child. So it's always a red flag when anyone that's an adult is trying to tell other adults about human rights. It's never a good thing.
Yeah. And one thing I see about all these refugees is none of them are going back and defending their countries. Like if it's my motherland, let's say I'm in India, and if tomorrow India gets attacked, and for some period of time I want to, have to live away from my country, I'm going to die, to get back to my motherland, because that's how it should work. It's a civilization. So as Iran is a civilization, but none of these refugees that are going back to their countries. They're just living off, on the wealth of the locals, like 500 pound a week. And now, yesterday I saw news. The Pakistani origin lady, I think she's in the Home Ministry of UK. She has declared that 10,000 pounds would be given per member to leave UK. Yeah. So imagine these guys, they produce in litter. They have around 8 or 9 kids, with multiple wives. Imagine how much money these guys are going to make. They're just going to go back to their country for a few months. Then they're just going to, change their passports and they're again going to take the same route, and they're going to again take the money back home. That's how they are going to loot the system.
They don't use this often enough, and when they do use it, they kind of freeze. But I wish that people would say it more. I wish they would tell people in hypothetical situations, like let's say there's someone that's a migrant from, I don't know, Pakistan, or I don't know, a Muslim Nigerian in, I don't know, Chicago, and there's someone who's debating them. What the guy in Chicago has to tell the guy is, hey, so if I want to go to Pakistan and I want to go to Islamabad with 20 other white guys, and we want to build a Christian church there, and we want to talk about human rights and free speech, can we do that over there? People don't give that argument often enough. It's obviously because nobody wants to go live there. They want to come here. But if people were to give that argument more often, you'd kind of freeze them and put them in their place, because they would have no way to respond to that. Because you can't do that in these countries.
Right. One guy, he asked the same question to that preacher in the street, the same Pakistani guy, and he asked if your religion, or if everything that you preach for is that great, what are you doing in my country? And remember, that guy, he just answered, "This is my country." And he said, "No, you're Pakistani." He said, "No, I'm British." He just bluntly put it out of his mouth that I'm a British, because he got a British passport, he thinks that he's British.
It's like a chameleon. They always change their color to whatever help them survive.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering, like he just got a passport, his accent is not even British. His accent is just like mine, like mixed with the British influence, of course. That guy, he has the guts to tell that white guy in the face that, hey, I'm British now. It's just like that Somalian guy says, hey, I'm the captain of the ship. Wow.
Did you guys see that guy named Johnny Somalia from Minnesota, who's 100% Somalian, but he was born in Minnesota? He did in 2022, he went to South Korea, exposed himself nude in the subway, got drunk in public, did an AI prank where there was a woman being sexually harassed in the AI. He did a bunch of terrible things. And thank God that South Korea is not as woke as the UK or Spain, because he got 2 years in jail. They registered him as a sex offender. He had to pay $150,000, which is the most you can pay in Korea. If it was more, they would charge him more. And he has to do forced labor, so he can't go and pick out cabbages. He has to work in a steel factory doing intense labor. And when he comes to America, if he doesn't register himself as a public sex offender within the first 3 days, he gets 10 years in America. I hope we get more and more of these stories in 2026, because this is what we need. We need people to go to jail. And the problem is people don't go to jail anymore. Criminals don't go to jail.
The thing is, we need also European countries, or I don't want to say just Europe, but we need countries in the West to be more rigid in prisons, because, for example, in Portugal, people that are being arrested and being in prison is actually beneficial. So you get paid, you get support, you got social support. And not only that, you are allowed to vote. You don't lose your voting rights. In fact, when it's time to vote, they go there for you to vote. They go to prison for people to vote. So what is the incentive for people to actually behave and integrate in society if you don't want to work, but you want to stay alive, and you want a shelter, and you want food, and you want some money, and you want free therapy? What do? Commit a crime, go to jail. It's best than to just be homeless in the street.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys are... Oh, sorry.
Yes?
Yeah, sorry. I don't know if you're familiar with El Salvador and Nayib Bukele's government. El Salvador used to have a gang, which was a terrorist organization called MS-13, which was in United States. It was in El Salvador. It was international. He went in, I think it was in 2018. He's now up for re-election. He controls now 90% of the Congress, the Senate, and crime is at 0%. 0% in El Salvador. It's safer than some parts of America, many parts of America, actually. And in the prisons, these people are forced to, sew clothing for children, manufacture goods, do forced labor, and actually contribute to the country's GDP. I mean, and he's called a dictator, but he has almost 90% approval rating. More countries need to do this.
Yeah,
And the Western woke liberals were terming him as aggressive, because he put everyone in jail. Like, of course, people with criminal record went in jail, but these guys, they were blaming that guy for keeping his streets safe. It's the same thing
yeah, they're
in
calling him far right.
yeah. So there was this Afghani immigrant who raped a few local girls. Whenever he was produced in the court, there they had a psychologist over there, like vouching for him that, okay, if the region where he comes from, it's okay to rape girls. So he was just trying to have his time in your country by doing the
Uh-huh.
things to your girls that he did to their girls. And that was like, these were the justifications, but none of them emphasized on the torture or the brutal thing that happened to that girl. Like, none of them took a stand for that girl. These guys were offering as if they're offering a free meal to this guy, as if he's welcome over there. And
That
they have
that
put up.
psychologist should lose her license for being a
Oh,
rapist
she's being
apologist.
paid. She's
Yeah.
being paid thousands of pounds. There is a system behind all of this. It is not random. It is not happening randomly. That guy is being instigated. He's being brainwashed to do all these things, and that is not just a rape. It is a motivational rape. He's just
Mm.
trying to lure the girls. Look at. There's a word called as love jihad. There's a rate card where when you convert a Christian girl, you get this much amount of money. It's the same happening in across the world where there are.
There's a great movie about that where this woman she's seduced by a Muslim in America. The guy was dressed in Western clothing. He had a normal job, and he convinces her to move back to Iran with her. And then
Not
once
Without My Daughter.
I'm sorry.
The movie name was Not Without My Daughter, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. And this happens all the time where Muslims move to Western countries. They get a Wall Street job or they get a high finance job. They get a beautiful girl to marry them. They tell them to convert to Islam, but they give them the Coca-Cola Zero version of Islam, the Coca-Cola Light version of Islam, and they
Mm-hmm.
convince the woman to join. And then when they bring the woman back to Egypt or back to Damascus or whatever, there they get the Muhammad version of Islam. They get the warrior version of Islam. And the woman is stuck because she's now in a country that has Sharia law, and she either has to get someone from the embassy to come rescue her, but they can't. And this happens more often than people think.
Yes. You must have heard about the ISIS wives. The Shamima Begum was her name. The ISIS wife who left UK and she joined ISIS. So her job was not to fight, but to just satisfy the physical needs of ISIS guys. And she was just an example, but there were multiple thousands of women from rest of the world. Somehow they were drugged to join
If
this.
people actually saw what was in the Quran, and if it could be translated and shown and blasted through some kind of media, it would really help, because there's even a passage in the Quran where Muhammad is 8 men are having sex with him in the Quran. So it also has this closet homosexuality thing too, that it promotes both pedophilia and this closet homosexuality, but then it says we should hang gay people publicly. So it's the most incoherent, satanic cult that masquerades as a religion, but really is totalitarian communism.
Wow.
I mean, a lot of it, and again, you find that in very oppressive institutions and societies. Like what you were just talking about is internalized homophobia.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this particular self-hatred, and it's just like, have you seen those videos from the one I saw is from Afghanistan, but I'm sure where they do I can't remember how they call it, but and also like who cares?
They dress up the
But it's the one-
guys.
yes,
Yeah,
and they do
they're
these.
called as
Yes.
they're called as the Karachi boys. The
Yeah,
boys think
And
5 to 7 made dance.
yeah, because like the dancing with women and blah 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 is too tempting or whatever the
Oh,
rationale
they
is.
dance with each other, right? I've seen one of these
Yeah,
videos.
they dress some of the boys as women, and they dance with them, and yada yada yada. And I'm sure there's
But they also take little boys. So like there are guys who are considered like an Islamic scholar in towns and villages, and he'll convince the parents to take the boy to train him to be a dancer because being a dancer is considered like something important in that village. And really he's just raping the boy, and the boy is not allowed to tell the parents. And then if he tells the parents don't believe him. Happens in Afghanistan every day, unfortunately.
Yes, and it happens in Pakistan as well. The reason why you have the grooming gangs reaching out not only to the girls but to the boys as well. So it has somehow got in their DNAs that it's okay to like do all these things with little kids, and the exact behavioral pattern is being followed in Europe. And then there you have these psychologists and psychiatrists talking on behalf of that guy. Hey, it's okay because back home he used to get all these things, so he's going to do this to your kids. I mean, I just can't stand the
There
audacity
was a
of that.
woman who was raped last year in Sweden. She was like 16, and apparently the judge in Sweden, this communist, said the rape only lasted 9 seconds, so therefore it's not a crime. The rape wasn't long enough. What?
Oh
What?
my
so
God! She could have
Yes, yes,
conceived a
yes.
child through that.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
he didn't go to jail. The guy, this animal, didn't go to jail.
Oh yeah, I didn't remember that case.
I think most
actually.
people in the West are absolutely sick of
And
these like
even
I had an
double
argument.
standards and the leniency.
wow,
Yeah,
I mean,
I had.
I couldn't stand it. I mean, how on earth would this be happening in Western world? Like, if
Well, I
it
think it's because I think we've lost our way, and I think people don't read anymore. I've emphasized this many times in the chat, and I think that if we were to promote, people like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, if you actually look at Julius Caesar, he's very similar to Trump. They both are very populist. They're both arrogant. They both have this manly bravado. You think that Alexander the Great, when he conquered Persia, he asked for consent from his people? No, he just went in and took it, and he governed. And this republic that Plato, Socrates, people that founded my country, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, they modeled it after Plato's republic.
Yeah.
This stuff isn't being taught anymore, and just it's Marxism, it's neo-Marxism. So if you don't teach this stuff, you're going to left with the opposite.
Yeah, again, it's that arrogance regarding like what came before, and there's just a very quick. There's a great Julius Caesar story, because at one point he was taken hostage by pirates, and they then wanted the Senate to pay the ransom to get him back, and they had proposed a price. And Julius Caesar scoffed at them, saying that was too low, because it was worth way more than that. And they upped the price, and it was paid. And eventually, Julius Caesar then came back, captured the pirates, and crucified them. But that's the thing. It's like and going back to Iran and what it was, even not just before 1979, but what it was before the 7th century when the Muslims conquered it.
Yeah.
People have no idea what they're talking about.
I respect the Iranians so much because the Iranians haven't forgotten their own history. The Iranians know their history, and other people in my country, they don't even know it.
Yes,
No.
that's the best thing that Iranians have done is they did not forget their roots. They did not forget how glorified their history was. Everyone has to do this. You cannot run away from your history because it repeats itself.
Yeah, and like everything that they did, like Persia, like they developed like the earliest forms of tax systems, census records, like having an official language for the government, like written state archives, and another thing that they did that was very very and also like because the Persian Empire was basically an inspiration for the Roman Empire. That's how old the Persian Empire
Yes.
is. And the one thing that they did, the Persians, that was very uncommon for the time is because they did conquer a lot of territory, but they allowed those conquered people to keep their religions, their local laws, their customs, um, which eventually became a problem because then it was that attitude that led to them trying to be friendly with the Muslims.
Yeah, too
And
tolerant, too inclusive.
yeah,
Yes.
you can't do that. And again, that's what happening in the West right now. Like tolerance is not a virtue, is not a positive thing. Like you can't be tolerant to people that are completely intolerant towards you. Like you're not going to change their mind. You're not going to lead by example. You're just going to show how weak you are, how easy of a target you are, and they're going to take advantage of that.
It's a great
it's
irony,
like,
isn't it?
yeah, it's like pulling a snake out of water, and you expect him to thank you, but the first thing it is going to do when it gets its power back is going to bite you,
Have you
because
heard
that's what.
the parable of the scorpion and the frog, where the frog is in the water and the scorpion says, "Help me by jumping on your back. I can cross across the water." No, you're just gonna bite me and you're gonna die. Like, no, no, no. I promise. I promise. I won't. I promise. I won't. I promise. I won't. Eventually, the frog lets him do it. The scorpion jumps on its back. They're halfway across the little river or whatever, and the scorpion stings it, and the frog dies. And the frog says, "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm a scorpion." And then the scorpion drowns too.
Exactly. It's exactly that's what's happening there. And as far as the Persian Empire is concerned, in the ancient times, India and Persians, we had like a trade route. It's called as the Silk Route, where the Persians would come to India, take things from here. They would come, learn into the ancient universities of Nalanda, Takshashila, Ratnagiri, and all. And there was a huge influence of Persian in our local languages as well. The language which I speak, it has around 10% of its words, they are Farsi. Like the language is called as Farsi in a local language. And all the algebra and everything that has gone towards the world, it was through India. The Persians spread it across because the they were the merchants, and now the other world, it is trying to take it over as if it was invented by them, the extremist world, but they haven't done anything apart from stealing and everything like other stuff. Persia was way more advanced. It was kind of a representation of humanity and all these tax systems and all these land records and everything. Yes, it was that great. The best thing is the people of like the Iranians or the Persians, they haven't forgotten it a bit. So
Yeah.
I'm just hoping they get it back, and they just restore the faith over there. And I so want Lebanon to become liberal again, like the actual one, which was like 40 years ago.
I mean, because I'm looking at some of the notes I took, and like the amount of things that we kind of take for granted, and that was actually invented by the Persian Empire. On top of everything I already said, they built like a royal road, which was over 2,500 kilometers long. It had postal stations all across it, which facilitated military mobility and trade routes. They invented the first international postal system. They invented the irrigation system and underground water tunnels that transported water from mountains to cities and farmland. Um, Advanced hydraulic engineering. They built dams, canals, underground aqueducts, flood control systems. Um, the Persian architecture that influenced the ancient world, which include innovations such as massive columned halls, terraced platforms, monumental relief sculpture. What else? They developed formal garden architecture based on symmetry and water channels, which then influenced European garden design. The Zoroastrianism, their religion, the key concepts such as good versus evil, final judgment, heaven and hell, the Messiah savior figure, which then influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Moral universalism, truth versus falsehood, moral responsibility, individual choice, and they founded the Academy of Ganda Shapur, one of the most advanced scientific institutions of the ancient world. They combine knowledge from Greece, India, and Persia in the fields of medicine, astronomy, philosophy. It's basically an early prototype of a university. It operated teaching hospitals where physicians trained through practical study. Military innovations. They maintained a permanent imperial army. One famous unit was the Immortals, which was their elite troops. Heavy armored cavalry. What else? The Persian carpet, obviously, was invented by the Persians, shockingly. Metalwork and luxury crafts. They basically are responsible for silver plates, gold vessels, jewelry, ceremonial weapons. They developed a distinctive visual language of kingship, winged symbols, royal reliefs, ceremonial processions, imperial.
That list is never ending. It's like they invented most of the things that we use here in the West.
The funny thing is that the Muslims claim half of these inventions are like, oh yeah, we invented algebra, but like it's because no, you conquered a people using barbarism, and then you claim their inventions as your own. You guys can't innovate anything.
They would first kill that guy. They would first kill that guy and then read his notes, and they say, "Oh,
yeah, it's my invention now. I took the patent." Yeah. They were the Thomas Edison that stole all of Nikola Tesla's inventions.
Yeah, because even like after, because that's the thing, because even the innovations that came after the Islamic takeover and were done by Persians under the
Persian slaves.
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like it was still done by Persians. It was still done by Persians that were Muslim in name only. Like pure Muslims, they've never created anything. They have never added anything to
just barbarism.
Yeah, and they claim everything, and everyone just goes along with it. It's ridiculous.
They must be so mad. Sorry, they must be so mad that the internet exists and that we're all connecting and finding out about these things because they're like, damn.
You know that there are a lot of some of the Islamic countries within Islamic societies, so not our societies, there are less people going to mosques. There are less people doing this. Their attendance is lower. So the internet was the worst thing that could have happened to Islam, on Jen's point, because it actually has decreased in this century in terms of followership in certain parts of the world. It's just in our part of the world where it's increasing because we've imported all the trash from their part of the world.
Yeah, the Cyberpunk Dingo channel, he talks a lot about that, actually. It's a YouTube channel. He's an ex-Muslim.
Yeah, it's very
and he
interesting
talks
that
about
the UAE has said to students who want to go abroad to study in the UK, but basically they've been warned against a strain of extremism in UK universities.
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
that's
I saw that last
very,
year.
very stark. And well, why can't we wake up to
Wi-
that? And yeah, there is this strain of extremism, and people wanting to do harm here and abroad. Yeah, we
Would
when like an
born
Islamic country calls this out, as they've got every right to do, we should take it seriously.
And the most successful one, the only successful one,
Yeah.
which is the United Arab Emirates.
But it's
Yes.
strange because they're the ones also injecting money into our
No,
universities to spread.
they specifically aren't though. It's more Qatar and Saudi. The
Mm.
UAE isn't really doing that.
There are two
Okay.
axes. There are two axes to this. So recently, the UAE, the United Arab Emirates government, declared that any of their student which is learning in the universities of UK, they're not going to get jobs, or they're not going to get accepted.
Yeah.
Those degrees are never valid because
Yes.
they are being brainwashed. They are being polarized. So the country Qatar is the main problem. They are funding everyone, the Al Jazeera or all these universities and the professors. Even if you see a guy hosting a Palestinian flag, blocking roads across United States or Europe on a weekday, he's getting usually heavily paid by these guys, and that money is
Yeah.
coming from all the blind followers of that movement.
And the globalists too, like Soros
Yes.
foundations.
Yes. So that's how UAE is. Like, they are very tolerant. They let you practice your religion. If you really want to eat pork, you have specific sections in super malls where you can go and buy it. If you want to have alcohol, you can buy it. Yes, those areas are kind of secluded. The specific stores are there where the Muslims are not allowed, or if they want to, they can. But that's how they're existing. So they respect your own cultural space, your own religious space, and your privacy.
Yeah, but it's an exception.
I do.
It's an exception. That one country is an
Yeah.
exception.
And
But I
they're
do
doing
Yeah.
good.
I do think it does that for income generation. So, for example, I learnt this week that a lot of influencers who live in Dubai, a lot of them are British. They've indirectly, so been sponsored by Dubai to live out there, to sell it as a tourist destination and as a place for people to base themselves, to earn money tax free. So there's a huge economic
Yeah.
like
because they like
rationale
money. They like money more
behind
than
it.
like
I don't
the
think it's
communism.
I don't think it's tolerance for like tolerance's sake. I think they're just willing to sacrifice some of their like inherent strictness
Yeah.
to
I
get some money, basically.
I wonder, like, are they doing that just to attract people to go there, Westerners, especially Western women? So then eventually when they have enough of them, they can like what happened because they're still in power. Like they're obviously it's their country and it's a Muslim country. So can they just like lock the gates with people in it and then be like, okay, now
No.
convert?
I have one question to ask all of you guys. Since you're from the Western world, I have one question for you guys. You wake up in the morning, you get your car, you drive on the road, you don't get anyone opposing or trying to block the road under the what do you call it, the environment protection gang, where they sit on the road holding the barricades or something, human chains.
Yeah, I've never seen that here.
Yeah.
You don't see a guy
No.
praying on the street blocking the traffic. You don't see a Pallywood guy protesting in the street. That's the first thing. Second thing, your daughter, your wife, anyone, even your mother, if she walks in the street, let's say at 2, 3, or 4 in the morning, all alone, without any fear, she is safe. You get money, you get a good night's sleep, and you're socially secured. Like, even if you wear a Rolex in the street, or if you drive a fancy car, it is not going to get stolen. If a country or if a social system gives you that guarantee that you're going to be safe, what else can you expect out of it?
I think like the issue with places like the UAE and Qatar and I guess less so Saudi Arabia. Above all else, they are very practical, and they know that they need Westerners
Yeah.
to build their countries.
Absolutely.
They need qualified Westerners. They need the doctors, the engineers. Like, they need them. And they are willing to put up with a more secular environment in order to get their countries up and running. Because, let's be honest, these places were a pile of sand until oil was discovered.
Yep.
They have no history. And they needed Westerners to go there. And obviously, they have enough money to pay them very handsomely and to build their countries, build their infrastructures, because they can't do that. They don't know how. And once that's done, once they're satisfied, but it's also like very short-term thinking, because I think that their idea is, we'll put up with them now, they'll build our countries, and then we can just get rid of them. And the thing, because they're also hoping that, and that's why they send their own to universities in Europe, or they used to, so they can learn, so that in the future they don't have to rely on Westerners. I don't know how practical that part is, because you can't teach Western ingenuity. So I'm not sure that these countries are going to be able to sustain themselves without any Westerners.
It goes back to your point about the Crusades, where like every time we've even been moderately united, we've wiped them out. It's just a pattern of evolutionary psychology that's happened, in evolutionary pattern that we've had. So it's not sustainable. You're 100% right.
As far as
go ahead.
Yeah, as far as UAE is concerned, they they are against the brotherhood that is spoiling the EU. If you have seen their external minister, he was in a press conference in Europe, and he said, these are his exact words. He said, let me tell you this. Then the lady interrupts him and asks him, like, we have translators. He said,
Yeah,
no,
I've seen that video.
in English so that you understand it better. There will come a time where you will see far more radical Islamists coming out of Europe and these countries, because you think he says something that it's appropriate to keep them than we knowing it. So they are opposing it. The only sponsor of this is Qatar. They're just, because it is headquartering the Hamas and all those people over there. So that country wants the whole world burned down on the basis of their money. As far as the UAE is concerned, they are putting their own children, like the royal people. They are putting their children on the front end, like they're leading all their government agencies and everything now. And their agenda is, they had all the oil money, they made more money out of it. Now they're investing the same money so that their country will sustain and survive.
That's why the Iran thing is so important, because if you take out Iran's money laundering and money transfer to all these parts of the world, you're really only left with Qatar as the other country that's doing it so evil an evil way. Because Saudi does it with some of the universities, but it's not as bad as Qatar, and you just leave one entity that's really the problem. And if you have then a domino effect of liberalism in Lebanon and other places, you kind of turn the tables on them.
Yes, and all these fake propaganda, because even Pakistan is he is the transporter of those things. They are just
I I
the
think I think Qatar has a better public image than Saudi Arabia. I think at least that's the perception I have. I think more people are more wary of the Saudis than they are Qatar
That's
for
a
whatever
problem.
reason.
That's a problem. It should be the other way around. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I have a friend. She works in Qatar. She's a veterinarian, and it's slave work. It's paid very well, but it's still slave work in terms of the you know she has one day off. Like she works, um, like she leaves work at the 11 in the evening, things like that, and like their attitude, because they don't know how to adapt. That's the thing, and they still have the attitude of slave masters. And we saw that, for example, when they built the stadiums for the World Cup,
Yeah.
and ever since then, they still do it. The difference is that, like she was telling me, and like, and because one night we were having a phone call, and there was a lot of noise coming from outside our place, and this was like 1 in the morning over there, or 2 in the morning, something like that. And it was construction work on the street outside, because after the backlash and all the attention that they got from the construction workers, aka slaves, dying building the football stadiums, so they stopped building things during the day. So now they do them at night, where it's not as hot, so there's less chances of people simply collapsing. Um, but yeah, so they do construction work at 2 in the morning. Um, they don't care. They're not adapting. That's the thing. They're not learning from the West. They they don't care. They do what they think they have to do in order to fool everyone else. They didn't like the lesson that they took from all of that, like all the deaths during the building of the World Cup stadiums, wasn't okay. Maybe we shouldn't abuse people.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
Yeah.
hearing echo.
Yeah, you have an echo.
Yeah, not anymore. Um, we shouldn't abuse the workers. We should pay fair wages, and make sure that they don't work in the heat, and make sure they're always provided during the day. So no, the lesson that they learned was, let's do this at night so no one is looking.
But that's because they have a lack of moral character in their society to begin with. It's not a high trust society. It's not a
Yeah.
society like Japan, that has a certain code, of honor and ethics and moral responsibility. It's just not there. So if it's not there
Yeah.
from how they've been teaching their grandparents, their great grandparents, their ancestors, it's never going to really arrive. The only way it'll arrive is if other countries that kind of had it before them, because they used to be Christian or other religions, like Lebanon with Christianity, like Iran with Zoroastrianism. That's the only way you can really change it, is if Lebanon goes back to being the way it used to be, Iran goes back to being the way it used to be, and then they don't have that hegemony and that dominance where it's all of the Middle East is the same with Sharia law. That's how you change this. It's the only way, by changing their neighbors.
And their immigration, like you cannot have their own passport, you cannot be their citizen. So what they do, you learn in your universities, you learn in your own country, you go to their country, you do the job, and once you're done, like, you just go back to where you come from. They don't own the responsibility of your healthcare or your social benefits and all. So that's how these countries are.
And they forced the law on the Westerners too. So I know this guy. He's Latino and in Miami, and
Mhm.
he had his girlfriend at the time because they weren't married. She was pregnant, and they were in Saudi Arabia or one. Well, I think it was Saudi Arabia, one of these countries. Yeah, it must. I think it was Saudi, and she
Sorry.
gave birth to their daughter in Saudi, but he wasn't married to her. So at the hospital, they forced him to marry her, even though they were both Christian, because a woman cannot give birth in a Sharia law state if she's not married to her husband. And if
Yeah.
they didn't both get married at the hospital when she gave birth, they were going to either be killed or put in jail. It was really weird.
Yes.
They had American passport, both of them.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And they didn't want to get married. They did not want to get married.
Yeah, it's funny, how things operate, and yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jen.
that's why I was saying, that I have trust issues with moving to one of these countries, like, or I would always have trust issues because who knows, like, what they can enforce. It's their country, they might have the financial, obviously the motivation of like having more people going there and all, but there's also a really dark side in these countries that most people are unaware of, precisely because, as Winter Olympian was saying, like, influencers get paid to promote these countries also for a reason. And I think, I don't know, like, it just feels fishy to me.
The Taliban have done this too. That the Taliban have gotten like 6 or 8 YouTubers to, oh my God, this place is awesome. Da, 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 da,
All
da,
right.
da.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
It's
seen
so
it.
weird. Like, I don't really use Instagram much anymore. I used to a lot, like, years ago, but then I stopped. It's just not good for mental
It's
health.
it's it's still good if you use it for education. Like I follow a lot
Yeah.
of pages that have library things and things like that. But there is a lot of trash out there. I agree.
Yeah, but I somehow, I don't know if it's because I'm a Western woman or something. I got suggested these videos of like these influencers were girls, like solo traveling girls, but I used to solo travel, but they're not traveling to just, through the West or to safe countries in Asia. No, they are like going to Afghanistan and whatever and filming themselves, like landing there alone. And then they're like, look at my experience this beautiful country with me. And then you see them like, she filmed herself. She was like filming herself, like putting on the hijab and like completely glamorizing it. So tone deaf.
Right.
That's all paid
I
though.
Yeah, but they don't say it's paid, and
Well, they
they
can't.
act like, of course, but and that is not legal, obviously, because there's like, even for influencers, like there's this law, especially like it's very enforced like in America. So if they come from America, like they can get in big trouble for that. They have to always disclose when they have a sponsorship. They always have to disclose like what the hell is happening. So that's another thing, but obviously it's completely not legal. But imagine how much lack of morals a person has, to the point where they get reached out by this country that is clearly problematic, that clearly
Yes.
treats women terribly. They reach out to a woman from the West. They're like, we pay you this. You can come here and say how great it is and how actually the women are super free and can talk to you and everything. And that's it.
So when a
Done
society
deal.
has a lot of surplus, like Roman Empire did at one point, a lot of things that used to hold the society together, like, family, maybe a Christian value at one point, or, morality, that stuff kind of just goes to the wayside, and it's all about money and greed. And if you look then, and I think the Arabs and the Muslims have really noticed that, hey, they don't really follow the religion as devoutly as we do. They could be Christian or Catholic in name only. So if we just pay them, we can prostitute them to basically destroy their own society for us. And it's
Yeah.
kind of what the Soviets did with their propaganda machine. And if you look at any people like Tucker Carlson or that are just selling their country out for money, it's something that the Arabs have learned. Hey, we have money. We can just pay them to destroy themselves and cause divisions within. And it's
Yeah.
happening more and more and more with these influencers, with this trash culture. And again,
These
I
people that
go
are fame hungry, the
it
yacht
goes back to
girls
people
in
not reading.
Dubai.
People don't read.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it is.
yacht
And I
girls.
mean, I wouldn't even say it's just like a religion thing because, you know, I do know obviously the West was built upon Judeo-Christian values. That's just a fact. But like, I'm not Christian. I would consider myself more of a pagan. But even in paganism, like there's this strong like community union, values, honor, thing. But even so, the people that are like rejecting religion, they're not or rejecting like the most popular religions, they are not just rejecting the religion itself, they're rejecting like the foundation of like humanity, of what makes a human a human, what makes a healthy human a human. And then these are the same people that are like, oh, mental health is so bad,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
my
yeah,
mental
yeah,
health,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh.
Uh,
And then the biggest contradiction is these are the same people that are like, women supporting women, I support women. But then like, you're not supporting women, girl. Like, look at what
you
happened with
know,
Iran. Nobody. It's crazy. Like there were so few women from the West that actually talked about this, and or at least amplified the voices of the women, that the Iranian women, or the women that were trying to give the voice to Iranian women, um talking about this, like women supporting women. But like,
nah,
when
I mean,
in your delusional idea that you live in a Western country that oppresses you, do you know what
I'll,
oppression is? Because we're pretty free. Like, yes, there is some misogyny, like there is some remnants of like misogyny and internalized misogyny and all that, sure. But like, it is nothing. It is like a little speckle of dust compared to what we see in these countries that they go to and travel, and they're like, oh my god, this is like, it's their culture. Like, these women, they're the same ones that are like internalized misogyny, but then they're the same people that are crying about internalized misogyny in the West are the same people that go to like Afghanistan, that used to go to Iran before to travel, and used to be like, ah, it's their culture. They hide their hair because it's their culture, and they don't think, maybe this is internalized misogyny too,
Yeah, because they'll
which
get
it
killed. They get killed
is.
if they show their hair.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
Like,
see,
which it is
what I want
internal
to,
misogyny. In fact, these countries, like these Islamic regime, like Islamic majority countries where women are oppressed to this point, is like internalized misogyny. The two words that, you know, women love to talk about in the West, it's at its apex there.
The,
But
the,
then suddenly nobody
the,
talks about it.
the pagans of ancient Greece are not even as sexually deviant and hedonistic as what you see in liberalized TikTok influencer culture. Calling these people pagans is an insult to the pagans of ancient Greece.
Yeah,
and you know about women,
absolutely.
we have a
And
saying
you know,
in India.
the lack of values for me is the worst thing. You know, I don't mind like what people want to do with their sexuality or their bodies. You know, I mean, I don't mind. You know, whatever. But like, for me, the biggest thing is like the lack of the community aspect, the caring about your neighbor, the kind of thing, like just the basic respect. It's like, just obviously social media hasn't helped. Like, if a person spends half of their day with their like front camera turned on, looking at themselves, either looking at themselves because they're checking themselves out, checking their makeup, checking their faces, or men, you know, checking their hair, or making a video or whatever, like, it's impossible to not, either you start hating yourself more, or you start being completely in love with yourself to an obsessive point. Which is good to love yourself, but like, if you're obsessed with yourself, there's
The
a problem. If you know, if that is the most important thing and your community doesn't matter, then you're just,
like the
it's
issue
lost. It's
with
all
that, and
lost.
just to wrap up, since we've already reached the 2 hour mark. By the way, yeah, I don't know if you guys can see
Yeah,
the
I can
recent,
see.
yeah, um, and but the thing with that, like the lack of community, is there's an interesting phenomenon where you constantly have this break of um, true community. And then you have this uprise of tribalism. Like there's I used to live in Glasgow for a while, and I used to work in the arts. And at the time, I followed this makeup artist, and she was a trans girl, and but she was one of the real trans women, like the kind that went through the hormones treatments. And I dare anyone, like you couldn't look at her and say, oh, that used to be a dude. and and I remember just getting so. Eventually, I unfollowed during the whole when the UK introduced the law banning, trans women from women's bathrooms, and because then she would start posting a lot of stuff from fellow trans women. And the thing is, the problem with the idea of tribalism is that in her case, because I remember in particular, she shared this tweet of like this so-called trans woman that was one of the ones that have a 5 o'clock shadow and all that. Is that people break the idea of community, and then they have these little tribes, but like they're not the same. Like in her case, like she could walk into any women's bathroom and no woman would ever feel threatened, because no woman would like, oh, that used to be a dude. No, that's a woman. And they can't understand that the law wasn't designed to ban trans people from the public sphere, like the tweet she shared at the time implied. The law was meant to protect women from the fake trans people, the ones that have 5 o'clock shadows and put on makeup and a wig and call themselves women. And you're not from the same tribe. And you lose, and then by sticking to your fake tribe, you're going against your community, because our community should be sensible, grown-up women that have the same principles and values and are able to, they can all accept each other. That's who, in her case, she should be prioritizing, not some bloke that puts on a dress and suddenly calls himself a woman. and that's the thing. It's like it's this rise of tribalism. It's like, and it's all, I think, done obviously by design. So because if we lose community, we don't fight back, because then there's not enough of us, and we lose trust in our neighbors, and that's the thing. It's like you can't let tribalism win, because if we were to all adhere to tribalism, we wouldn't be doing this, because I'm not an Indian, so I shouldn't be talking with Hindu guy here. I like, that's the thing. And like, but because we believe in community and we have shared principles and values, we are able to do this. And we are better off because of it. And so that's the thing. Like, people need to deny tribalism. They need to realize that just because you might have the same label as someone else doesn't mean you're the same. The same way I'm a white guy, but that doesn't mean that my people are, far right neo Nazis, because I have nothing in common with them apart from my skin color. But in terms of principles and values, I have nothing in common. And so I don't care about, what my tribe should be or where. No, I care about community. And in order to form a community, all you need is people with the same principles and values. And with that being said,
Can I add one last thing?
absolutely.
So it's very funny that you say that the destruction of the community, the liberalism, how Jen was talking about how this fake feminism is doing all these things, all these subversions, and all this neo-Nazi hatred that we see. It's very funny that it goes back to Iran. So Iran has an alliance and a love of Jewish people since the time of Cyrus the Great, when he freed them out of Babylon. And you can go back to Jerusalem and he used the royal treasury to refund building the Temple of Jerusalem. It hurts them so much that the Iranian diaspora is so united together and with the Jewish people, both in America and in Israel. It's funny how it causes them to self-destruct because they don't know how to respond to this, because everything they use with their Palestinian gay communist playbook doesn't work right now. And that's why I think Iran is the biggest help for that domino effect. I think this is so important right now, what's happening. It could reverse some of that tribalism in the West, in my opinion.
Yeah, because again, they're not the same. And I recommend everyone to there's a YouTube channel called, because they basically they're this father and son that they fled Iran in 79, and they opened this cigar store in London. It's called Davidoff's of London. You can just search that on YouTube and you'll get a bunch of videos of these two absolute gentlemen in pristine suits having this, just, to me, hearing them talk, I don't smoke cigars, but I find it very cozy because they're, utter class. And you can't say that these people are the same as a bunch of Muslims from Afghanistan trying to invade and killing and raping their way through the West. They're just not. So just to harken back to where this all started, people like Code Victorian are naively or stupidly dangerous, because I don't care if it's a lack of knowledge, or if it's done on purpose, whatever the case. They are not good for what we're trying to do, because the solution to this is not to put every foreigner in the same basket. The solution to this is not, because then it's where does it stop? What are you going to say next? That French people are not allowed outside of France? Where does this stop? Because sure, again, and we talked about this in the first episode, I believe that at least 90% or maybe more, whatever, of any country should be composed of natives. But that doesn't mean there isn't room for qualified immigration, as long as those immigrants have a genuine love and appreciation for the culture and the history and traditions and so on of the country they immigrate towards. But to say that they're all the same and they all need to be kicked out is retarded. And I want to just and talking about how every time the West has been united, we have won. I wanted to wrap up by showing our viewers the post we have on our website about the siege of Vienna. And the interesting thing about this, and we do have another post that we can highlight in a future episode about Vlad III.
Love that guy.
Otherwise known as Dracula. And he scared the Ottomans so much that they didn't try to invade Europe for 2 centuries. And when they finally did, they were stopped at the siege of Vienna. And they were stopped because the West was unified. It wasn't just the Austrians. It was the entire West uniting to prevent the conquering of Vienna, which in turn, if that had happened, they would have just conquered the rest of the West. And it's further proof that if we are united, we win. There has never been an instance throughout history where a united West has lost. Because I'm sure we all have seen those comments of them mentioning the Crusades and how the Muslims won and yada, 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 bragging about that. But they didn't win the First Crusade. Because the First Crusade, the West was unified in freeing and protecting, because as we mentioned before, the First Crusade happened because of the Muslims invading the Christian kingdoms in the Middle East. And that was why the First Crusade happened, was to protect the Christians in those lands and the pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. And so the West was united and the West was victorious. Further crusades, less so, because then greed comes into play, personal ambitions come into play, and we lost. But we have to look to these events. We have, like the siege of Vienna, to gain courage and confidence that as long as we are united, we win. And that's, again, I can't stress this enough, people like Code Victorian are very dangerous because they do the opposite of what we should be doing. They divide us. Because now the problem is, and that's why we hope that the more we here at the Society of the Custodians of the West grow, we can reach more moderates. We can reach people that we are the majority, and the people that are lost right now, because obviously they don't identify themselves with the far left, but they also don't identify themselves with the far right, and especially on social media where that's all you hear and see. It's like, well, it's pointless because there's no option. So they kind of just give up. And we need to be united, because otherwise, and we need to be united under a banner of moderation, like in realizing that we need allies and we need to have respect for other great civilizations like Persia, like Japan, like India. Like, we are not superior the same way that none of these civilizations are superior to the West. We are all equal. We have all created great empires. We have all added to humanity. And people in the far right, where all they see is white, 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 and the West and Europe first and all that nonsense, they do the opposite of what we should be doing. They just divide us further, and they won't accomplish anything, because, just again, look at history. The far right has never accomplished anything of note, and it never will, because in order for you to accomplish anything, uh, at least in the right, you need the moderates, and they will never attract the moderates because to them the right, and you have a bunch of right parties. You have Restore Britain with Rupert Lowe at its helm, which is, in my opinion, absolutely the guy that people in the UK should be voting for, not Reform, not Farage. We'll see how that goes. You have a lot of parties. You have Vox in Spain. You have Chega in Portugal. But to the far right, these parties, and they are traditional right-wing parties. They're not extremists. They're not far right, despite what the left propaganda will tell you. They're just conservative, traditional, patriotic, right-wing parties. And the problem is for the far right is that they will never be either anti-Semitic enough, racist enough, homophobic enough, sexist enough. I think I've said that already. Like they will never be enough. They will never be hateful enough. And so they also won't vote for the right-wing parties because they think, oh, they just, that's not what we need. We need, the Fourth Reich or whatever. And so it's a complete waste. And the more people are attracted, because a lot of moderates are just going to give up. But then there's few that are going to be pulled to that side because, well, there's no other option. So as well go with this guy, because these guys will kill me because I'm white. And so you lose votes that are wasted. It's never going to win any election. They're never going to do it because at the end of the day, they're truly cowards. And so, yeah, like, people like Victorian projects like that need to be shut, and they need to give way to projects that defend unity and moderation between equally great civilizations and or the descendants of great civilizations such as ourselves.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone has any final comments to make.
Yeah, just a last comment from my end. If you see the differences in between the Palestine supporters protesting in the street versus the Iranian, like the Persian supporters protesting in the street, the Iranian supporters, they did not vandalize property, they did not berate the policemen, nor they called any bad names or hated the country they are living in right now. So they are thankful to all those countries who have given them asylum or who have given them jobs. And I can 100% sure that these guys would be the least on the social care or the social program.
Oh yeah,
especially
yeah.
that these
100%. They were giving the policemen flowers and
Right.
thanking them
Yes, I
for
saw that.
protecting the protest.
So that's what I always say. Support the country that you live in, or live in the country that you support. That's it. You cannot be what is the exact word for it? You cannot be that guy, who eats off from a country, who lives in a culture, who wants to destroy the same culture. And the second point I want to make is the power of community is always vested in protecting the girls of that community, the minor girls, because all these crusaders or all these jihadis are on, they're always behind the young girls. That's where they hit bad, and that's where the entire society collapses. So that's all we have to promote. The power of community should be there. And as far as the grooming gangs and all these things are concerned, that is where these guys hit. So in the ancient times in India, whenever these attackers would come, the first thing that they would do is they take away the women and they would sell them off in the markets, in the Afghanistan and all those regions. So that's how, people prevented them. Like, they would protect their women, or if at all they think that they're going to lose the war, the women would, I know it's a controversial thing, but the women would either protect themselves or they would just eat poison or die, because they wouldn't want to create a generation of their own DNA that is matched with the DNA of the invaders, because they're going to face hell when they get captured. So that's how serious things are, and that's the last comment I would want to make.
All right, guys. So thank you for being a part of our second episode. To anyone watching or listening on Spotify, I hope you've enjoyed. And we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Okay,
Bye
bye
bye.
everyone.
Pleasure
Bye.
talking to you.